I used to think I was doing well in life, until I noticed how often I looked at everyone else. It happened so quietly that I didn't even realize it at first. I bought my first nice pair of shoes after saving money for months. I remember opening the box in my small apartment and smiling because I had wanted those shoes for a long time. The smell of the new leather filled the room, and I walked around the apartment wearing them, even though I had nowhere to go. For a few days, every time I looked down, I felt proud. Then one afternoon, I met an old classmate for coffee. He arrived wearing a much more expensive pair. I laughed and told him they looked great, but on the way home, I kept looking at my own shoes. Somehow they didn't feel special anymore. Nothing about my shoes had changed, only my thoughts had. That small moment stayed with me longer than I expected. After that, I began noticing the same pattern everywhere. When I received a promotion at work, I felt excited for exactly one evening. The next morning, I opened social media and saw someone celebrating a bigger promotion. A week later, another friend posted pictures of a beautiful new house. Suddenly, my new position didn't seem important. I wasn't unhappy because of my own life. I became unhappy because I had borrowed someone else's measuring stick. I didn't understand it then, but I was slowly turning every success into a competition that no one had asked me to join. The strange part was that I wasn't naturally competitive. As a child, I celebrated small victories without thinking about anyone else. I still remember bringing home a good test score. My mother smiled, made my favorite dinner, and hung the paper on the refrigerator. I wasn't the top student in school. It didn't matter. I felt proud because I had done better than before. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, that feeling disappeared. I stopped asking whether I was improving. Instead, I kept asking whether someone else was ahead of me. One evening, I was talking with an older neighbor while we waited for the elevator. He noticed I looked tired and asked how work was going. I shrugged and said, "It's fine. I just thought I'd be further along by now." After a moment, he asked, "Further than who?" I laughed, because I thought it was a joke. "You know," I said, "people my age." He looked at me and quietly replied, "There are millions of people your age. Which one are you racing?" I didn't have an answer. The elevator doors opened, but his question stayed with me. A few weeks later, our company held a meeting about employee well-being. I expected another talk about eating healthy or exercising more. Instead, a guest speaker shared something I had never heard before. She explained that psychologists have studied something called the hedonic treadmill. She said that people often return to their usual level of happiness surprisingly quickly after positive events like buying a new car, getting a raise, or moving into a better home. At first I thought that sounded depressing, but then she added something unexpected. She said the biggest problem wasn't adaptation itself. Human beings naturally get used to good things. The real problem was when adaptation mixed with constant comparison. We didn't just get used to what we had. We kept moving the finish line every time someone else achieved something new. I had never heard it explained that way before. It felt as though someone had quietly described my entire adult life. I went home and searched for more information because I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night changed the way I looked at many of my own decisions. Over the next few months, I started paying closer attention to my reactions. Whenever someone announced good news, I watched my own thoughts. A friend bought a bigger apartment. Another traveled to countries I had never visited. Someone else started a successful business. My first feeling was often excitement for them. But almost immediately, another voice appeared inside me, asking why I wasn't doing something equally impressive. I realized those thoughts arrived automatically. I hadn't invited them. They simply appeared. Knowing that didn't make them disappear, but it helped me stop believing every thought that crossed my mind. One Saturday, I cleaned an old closet and found a notebook from several years earlier. Inside, I had written a list of goals. I wanted a stable job, enough savings to stop worrying every month, a quiet place to live, and time to visit my parents more often. I sat on the floor, reading that page for a long time. I had already achieved almost everything on the list. The strange part was that I had completely forgotten those dreams because I had replaced them with new ones borrowed from people I barely knew. Looking at that notebook felt like meeting a younger version of myself. He would have been amazed by the life I now considered ordinary. That realization made me unexpectedly emotional. Not because my life was perfect, but because I had been so busy chasing the next thing that I never thanked myself for reaching the things I once prayed for. Around that time, one of my coworkers invited me to lunch. We talked about work, money, and future plans. At one point, he admitted he had turned down a higher-paying position at another company. I stared at him in surprise. "Why?" I asked. "Wouldn't that have been better?" He smiled and took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Maybe for my salary," he said, "not for my life." He explained that the new job required constant travel and much longer hours. His young daughter had recently started asking why he missed so many bedtime stories. "She won't remember how much money I earned," he said quietly. "She'll remember whether I was there." I had expected him to talk about career strategy. Instead, he talked about time. Walking back to the office, I realized that two people could look at the same opportunity and honestly choose different paths because they valued different things. For years, I had assumed there was one correct definition of success. Maybe there never had been. Months passed, and life continued as usual. I still wanted to improve. I still worked hard and planned for the future. The difference was small, but important. Before making a big decision, I started asking myself one simple question. If nobody could see this, would I still want it? Sometimes the answer surprised me. There were purchases I quietly canceled because I realized they were mainly for appearance. There were goals I kept because they truly mattered to me even if no one else noticed. That single question saved me from chasing many things that would probably have left me feeling empty again. One evening I met several old friends for dinner. As always, the conversation eventually turned toward careers, investments, houses, and vacations. In the past, I would have left feeling either proud or disappointed, depending on how my life compared with theirs. This time, something felt different. I listened to everyone more carefully. One friend, who owned a beautiful home, admitted he barely had time to enjoy it. Another had a prestigious job, but confessed he hadn't taken a real vacation in years. Someone else who earned less than everyone at the table couldn't stop smiling because he had recently become a parent. I walked home that night, realizing how little a single photo or job title could tell me about someone's actual life. We compare our private worries with other people's public highlights, then wonder why we always lose. I don't think that habit will ever disappear completely. Even now, I still catch myself looking over my shoulder sometimes. But when I do, I remember the notebook I found in the closet, the neighbor's quiet question in the elevator, the surprising idea of the hedonic treadmill, and the coworker who chose bedtime stories over a bigger paycheck. None of those moments changed my life overnight. Together, though, they slowly changed the direction of my attention. I still have goals. I still hope to grow, earn more, and build a better future. But every now and then, I stop long enough to notice the life already standing around me. It isn't perfect, and neither am I. Yet when I compare today's version of myself with the person who opened that shoebox years ago, I can finally see something I missed for a very long time. The race that exhausted me the most was never happening out in the world. It was happening quietly inside my own mind, and I had been the one moving the finish line all along.